All right, I am lucky to be joined here with State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, who's also the Vice Chair of the DNC, visiting Utah. Welcome to Utah.
Oh my gosh, I'm happy to be here. It's really outstanding. It's my first time in Utah, believe it or not.
Yeah, I was so excited to see another person from Pennsylvania in Utah. It has been a while to have that, and a lot going on, so this is a perfect time to talk.
It is, and I'm still smiling from ear to ear about what happened on Tuesday. So many people worked incredibly hard to get the victory that we had, and I'm excited to see the work that we're doing at the DNC and the work that individual candidates and committees are doing to really see it pay off.
Yeah, let's talk Tuesday. Okay, so Tuesday, folks in the national media are calling it the Dems Sweep. I know Democrats like the term Dems Sweep. Republicans are saying, hey, Democrat states, Democrat cities, elected Democrats are not surprised. So I just want to get your reaction. Are you taking a measured approach, or how do you feel about Tuesday?
No, this was a huge victory, a historic victory, and you can have people try to poo-poo these results, but I hope that folks would listen to what the American people are saying. In states like Virginia, which had Republican, well, still has a Republican governor, New Jersey, a place that the president was able to dramatically shrink the Democratic margins, and a state where I think you have to go back 60 or 70 years to see any party that has held the governorship for 3 terms in a row being of the same party. And then in Georgia, where you had Democrats for the first time taking control of really critical statewide positions as it relates to the Public Utilities Commission. So these are not Democratic states, and these victories were not made possible just by Democratic voters. These were independent voters, Republicans, people who were looking at their lives and saying, I can't afford my life. I can't afford to take care of my families. I'm getting emails from my healthcare company letting me know that my premiums are going to go up dramatically. I'm seeing a reduction in economic activity. I'm looking at the jobs numbers, which just today, CNBC was reporting are the worst levels of job losses that we've seen since 2003, and has surpassed what we even saw during the Great Recession. So the president promised people a lot of different things. There were a lot of people who were rightfully frustrated about the state of the economy. And he ran saying he was going to lower costs on day one. He was going to get us out of all these foreign wars. He was going to focus on Americans. And instead, what we've gotten is costs are higher than they've ever been, in large part driven by his erratic, corrupt tariff policies. We see that just today or yesterday, he announced that we might be going to war with Nigeria, as well as Venezuela. And I cannot, this coming from Pennsylvania, we're a huge agriculture state. I know that people don't think about that with Pennsylvania, but majority of our industry is in agriculture. And when you look at what the president has done as it relates to agriculture, not just Argentinian beef, but in his first term, the decisions that he made, which put our dairy farmers in a really tough spot, people have never gotten back some of those markets that they lost because of the tariff policies we saw in the first administration. So I say all that to make the point that Democrats in different states, completely different profiles, different neighbors that they were talking to, all talked about the 3 simple words that I think sum up what the Democratic Party has to be about. And it's how do we make life better for working people and working families? And that's what our candidates talked about.
Well, the vice president made an interesting point about Tuesday's results, saying, an election, municipal election, Democrats have always had turnout for off-year elections, things like that. So that's why he's saying maybe municipal election isn't a way to say, hey, 2026 is going to bring the Democratic wave. I mean, it is a municipal election. Not everybody turns out. You know, can you really predict 2026 based off of mayoral races, some governor races in the country?
Well, here's the good news. We don't spend any time at the new DNC trying to predict anything. We spend every day just trying to work for the American people. I think the Democratic Party, and I think all of us recognize after November, we have to do some things differently. And a part of what we had to do differently is to keep the main thing, the way the Super Bowl award-winning MVP, Jalen Hurts, likes to say to the team. And the main thing for us is very simple. Can people look their kids in the eyes and know that they're not lying, that things are going to be a little bit better than they were for them? Can people be in a position where they feel like they can retire with some dignity and decency? Do folks feel like their job is putting them in a position where they can take care of the needs that they have? And on every single one of those metrics, the American people are saying loudly that they do not feel like that is possible in the way that they want it to be possible. And it's why I sort of alluded to before the corruption with the tariffs. What's been so frustrating for us to watch, for me to watch in particular, is that these tariffs have not only stymied economic growth, but they have been instituted in a way that has made money for Donald Trump and his supporters, but has cost the American people. One of the most egregious examples was the president saying that he was going to do tariffs toward China, I guess it's 2 or 3 weeks ago. And somebody who had insider information on this shorted Bitcoin to the tune of $187 million that they made because of this insider information. But for the average person, people are seeing everything from the cost of car seats to the price of eggs to the price of building materials if they're trying to buy, build or buy a new home. All those things are going through the roof. But the folks who are close to the president, who are friends with him, who have access to this information about how he's going to turn the tariffs up or down, they get to reap huge financial windfalls. I don't think that's right and that's fair. And frankly, it's not a partisan thing for us to say you should be able to afford your life. You should be able to feed your family. You should be able to afford health care. And, I wished, I really do, that the president had kept his word on these things. But unfortunately, not only has he not made life better for the American people, in every single economic metric that you can look at, he's made things worse. And I think that's what the American people were saying on Tuesday very loudly, that they want us focused, all of us, focused on how we're going to make their lives more affordable. And also, I think people are sick of the chaos and the corruption that has become commonplace.
And affordability was the big issue, whether it was in Virginia or New Jersey or in New York City. That was the main point of Zoran Mamdani's campaign.
Even in Georgia.
Even in Georgia with the PSC board. But the message was kind of different. Zoran Mamdani stood out, and the national media really focused on Zoran and the Democratic Socialist part of it and things like that. And I know some party leaders like Hakeem Jeffries, it took time for them to embrace Zoran Mamdani. So how do you continue as a party to bring in a big tent here? Because you saw the energy that was in New York City, but a Mamdani is not the same candidate as Mikey Sherrill, isn't the same candidate as Abigail Spanberger. They're different, but in the same party. How do you embrace all of the differences that you have here?
Well, I want to say this, for the new DNC leadership team, we endorsed all of our nominees right after they won, because I think it's really important for us to not be trying to pick our nominees. Voters choose our nominees, and then it is our responsibility to do everything we can to help ensure that our nominees are successful. As it relates to, Senator Schumer, who never endorsed in the race, I think he should have. Obviously, Leader Jeffries did ultimately, and that was the right thing to do. But I think for me, there was a clear through line between these campaigns. All of them were talking about how to make life more affordable for the people in their communities, not just as like a talking point, but these are candidates who have a real record and commitment of fighting on these issues in a way that voters felt they could trust them on these issues. And if you look at the energy cost concerns, if you look at food cost concerns, if you look at just general affordability concerns, when people were asked in exit polls, Mikey Sherrill was more trusted than Jack on energy by double digits. An issue that Republicans had spent enormous amounts of money trying to push her on, but she was very clear about some of the things that she wanted to do. Zoran obviously talked about what we needed to do around universal child care and around transportation issues, around housing. And you saw Abigail in Virginia talk about housing, talk about the impact of the government shutdown and of the Doge cuts on people in Virginia. But as a party leader, one of the things that I know is important for us to do, no part of our party needs to try to dominate the other. This is not about us going to the left or going to the right. This is about us expanding our party. And what we saw in this election was a real roadmap for how we can expand our party. I want candidates to run who are the most authentic representatives of their neighbors. And I think that we have to have that in every single state. You know, some of the candidates we just saw win in Utah on Tuesday. They're not the same as, you know, what Mikey was talking about, or Zoran, or Abigail, and that's fine. Um, Neighbors, talking to neighbors about what matters to them, and then electing candidates that they feel like speak to those concerns. That is a recipe for success every single time. So we don't need to like put our candidates in a lab and try to get the perfect, candidate. The perfect candidate is the candidate that people's neighbors want to vote for.
All right, let's talk about the issues of the day. Government shutdown. So, in the minds of a lot of people,
Yeah.
it affects different states differently. For example, here in Utah, we have about 85,000 to 87,000 on SNAP benefits. But we also have Salt Lake City International Airport, which is going to be impacted by the FAA restriction. Hey, hang out. I got a place for you. This is a great couch, too. You can hang out. And then in Pennsylvania, I know it's 2 million people on SNAP benefits. So different states are being impacted differently. But what we're seeing here in Washington is Republicans are saying Democrats can end this shutdown by just giving us 5 votes, and then we can work on the Medicare issues after that. Democrats are saying the Medicare issues are so incredibly important that this shutdown is necessary in order to make that negotiation. At what point do Democrats feel that what could be temporary suffering of folks on SNAP and folks flying here for the holidays, why is that worth what they're arguing on healthcare right now?
Well, I think we have to separate out two things. We've had a number of shutdowns. The 2 longest shutdowns have been on the watch of this president, by the way. But no president until this one has ever frozen SNAP benefits. The president is making a choice to freeze SNAP benefits, and it is important that people understand that. And I know that if, you're a Republican or you voted for him, to hear a Democrat say that, you can just hear it and let it go in one ear and out the other and say that's the typical partisan stuff, but it's really not. 2 federal judges, one appointed by a Republican, I think one appointed by a Democrat, have both said in separate rulings that the funds exist to fund SNAP, and have ordered the administration to fund SNAP. And there's been a lot of different messages coming out of the administration. The president said on Truth Social that he was going to withhold SNAP benefits, continue to withhold them, because he feels like only Democrats get them, and this is a way for him to punish Democrats who aren't doing what he wants. And then the White House has walked that back through the press secretary and said that they are going to follow the directives of a federal judge. I hope that they do, and that we don't have an administration that makes it a regular practice of ignoring federal judges. And by regular, you should do it 0 times, to be clear. But
those funds are still not enough. Like that's going to fund people for maybe through November potentially. So there is a point, if this continues, that even those funds that are earmarked and he lets them go, if they do, it's still going to cause some suffering if this continues to go on.
Well, a part of the issue on this topic is that during the debate around the big beautiful bill, which was a big beautiful betrayal of the American people, they cut food stamps in that legislation by over $100 million. And so we're already in a situation where food stamps are going to be restricted again because of a decision made by this administration. And not only, we talk about food stamps so often as like the sort of moral thing to do the right thing to help people eat. And that's right. That's critical to me. We should make sure kids and seniors, who are majority of the recipients, have food to eat. However, it's also economically smart, the food stamp program. It is one of the most stimulative programs of the federal government. And when you think about rural communities, you have many rural communities where 50-60% of all of the business that is done at those grocery stores is because of SNAP recipients. And so the challenge here, even with the reduction that's in the big beautiful bill, is that we're going to see a decimation of rural food options at a time where we need to be expanding supports in our rural communities, not restricting them. But as it relates to the shutdown more broadly, Democrats have said from day one, we want to negotiate. Republicans control the House of Representatives, they control the Senate, they control the presidency. It brings me no joy to say those things, but that is the no joy. But that is the reality of this situation. And so if you're in control of all 3 branches of government, you are responsible for the government not functioning. That's like pretty basic. But if you're saying, hey, we need Democratic votes, then you need to do things to earn Democratic votes. And the way you earn Democratic votes is by not putting the American people in a position where they can't afford health care. And I said it multiple times, Democrats said it throughout the process, that we talk so much about the cuts to Medicare and Medicaid, which are devastating. We're talking about almost $1 trillion coming out of those programs to fund tax cuts for really wealthy people. That's what the big, beautiful bill did. But the other issue here is that the reduction in federal spending on healthcare for our seniors, folks with disabilities, our kids, also puts pressure on people who are just in the private insurance market. And so even if you say, well, Malcolm, I don't have Medicare or Medicaid, why the heck do I care? Even people in private pay are seeing their premiums go up dramatically because healthcare companies are saying we have to pass on the costs somewhere, and they're passing them off to the people who have private insurance through non-federal means. And so what Democrats have been saying, over and over and over again, is we can't be in a position where Republicans say, we'll stop letting people starve unless you let us steal their health care. None of those things have to happen. We have the resources in this country to actually fund healthcare and to fund food stamps. We have everything that we need, but what we need is an administration that prioritizes working families, middle-class families over the wealthiest Americans. And that has been what we've seen in this administration. If you're one of the 400 wealthiest Americans, then this is a golden age for you. If you're everybody else, it's not a golden age.
But this shutdown could lead, the president has talked about getting rid of the filibuster, which if you guys took control in 2026, you'd be like, oh, okay, we can get things done. That'd be great. But if you don't, then that means Republicans can pass their agenda without needing your 5 votes. So is this a dangerous path to go on if the president pushes his party to get rid of the filibuster? Now we're at this point in politics where one party gets control, then they can rule the entire country for however long that they're in office.
Well, nothing surprises me in terms of this president trying to get rid of checks. The issue that we have right now is not the filibuster. The issue that we have is we have members of Congress who forgot their oaths, forgot that they are members of Congress, that they are members of a separate and equal branch of government. There was an article, and I apologize, I'm forgetting the outlet that reported it, but that talked about the staggering number of days that Mike Johnson has kept the House closed, for example, and what that has meant in terms of not only the productivity of the House, but the importance of the House. It's the president and Steve Bannon and others who laugh constantly. This has also been reported that they laugh and say that Mike Johnson is a puppet for the president, that he's in complete control of this Congress. And I think that the American people want a check on this president and on all presidents. I think the American people are incredibly frustrated at any person who gets into public office who doesn't want to serve, but who wants to rule. And so the president has spent his entire time in office, his entire time as a candidate, talking about how he can get rid of any checks on his power. So what he's saying about the filibuster, he can try to say it's because of the shutdown, but he wants to get rid of any check from Congress. And I would hope that Republicans would, find a spine. They still have health care right now. Maybe they can get a spine transplant, whatever they need to do. But I hope that they would stand up for co-equal branches of government and stand up understanding that there will be a Democratic president at some point. And we're filming this, so I want you to understand, if we have a Democratic president who thinks they're going to be a king, I will be opposed to that as well. We have to have a system of government where the rule of law is paramount, a system of government where there are serious checks and balances, and where people are willing to work together. Democrats have said from day one, we're ready to negotiate. But for a large portion of this shutdown, the president was in Asia. The president was literally dancing on the tarmac in Malaysia while we were seeing the stress on our air traffic control, while we're continuing to see the issues around food stamps, while we're continuing to see the issues around our national parks, which are going to be in a position right now. They've still, been open, but people don't recognize maybe as much as they should that our beautiful national public
Utahns
spaces.
definitely do.
Oh, you get it.
We got the 5 parks, so.
But it is a huge economic driver. It's a huge economic driver. And so I'm really concerned about what's happening with our economy. and also really concerned about the federal gov. I mean, excuse me, the Fed. One of the Fed governors out of Illinois, I want to say, said that there might not be an additional rate cut this year because of the inflationary pressures of the tariffs and of the shutdown.
Finally, on this, I just want to ask a kind of a broad question about, this isn't something I know you would do because you travel all over Pennsylvania. Now in your chair, vice chair, you're all over the country. You're here in Utah, and you fight on the issues that you believe in. But after 2024, when you see an overwhelming support for Donald Trump and his policies, he won all the swing states. He won the popular vote. So you can look at it and say voters voted for this. There's not much that he said in that platform that wasn't exactly what he's doing here. The tax cuts, he was pretty open about that, things like that. So why don't Democrats have the mindset then? Okay, you guys, the country voted for this. Let's see how the policies play out. And if you don't like it, we'll make the case in 2026.
Because people can't wait for that. And also, I don't know that I don't think voters voted for this. We see a lot of people who voted for Trump who didn't believe that he was going to be sending ICE out as mass agents, uh, rounding up people who don't have all the paperwork they need, but who are not criminals, who have been in our communities for decades, kids who came here as DACA recipients. I mean, if you look at just what's happening in ICE as one example of something he campaigned on, the majority of the American people now oppose this president's immigration policies because what many people heard was he was going to go after criminals. And I want to be on the record as I want to go after criminals. If you are here committing crimes, you need to be arrested, you need to be prosecuted, then you need to be sent back to your country of origin. But for the people who are here working, paying taxes, not able to receive government services, but still paying taxes, for people, the little abuela who's been here for decades, we don't need to be going after her. We need to be going after the gangs and the transnational criminals, all the things that a lot of people heard, but that's not what's happening. A majority of the people in ICE detention right now have no criminal record. And that is a problem. They're actually arresting people who are showing up as they're supposed to their immigration hearings and then absconding them mass men. So that's one example of an area where the president, campaigned a certain way and people, heard something different.
Well, the new argument is now that the crime was coming into the country. So now that's why he's saying criminals.
Well, he says a lot of different things, but I think what people are seeing from this administration is a mismatch of priorities. The priorities that we heard from him and he said this in his first interview after he won. He said, "I'd never heard the term groceries so much. It was an old-fashioned term, groceries, but I won because of groceries." What has the president done on groceries? I mean, we still have the president saying that you need an ID to get into a grocery store. Now, I haven't been in Utah too long, but I've not been asked for an ID to get into the grocery store just yet. So I think that we just have a president who seems completely disconnected from what's actually happening on the ground in reality. And because his family has made so much money, he's made $6 billion since January. So, to him, the economy's doing great. He's doing better than he's ever done. But for us, we're really struggling. And I think the American people have the right to change their minds. And they did change their minds. But what we saw in the last election, in contrast to what we just saw in this election, where there are a lot of people who stayed home. A lot of people said, I don't trust Democrats or Republicans to solve my problems, and I'm going to stay out. If from 2020 to 2024, 7 million fewer people voted in that election. So I think that we have a lot of work to do to earn people's trust. And so the Democratic Party is saying, every chance we get, that our entire focus is on making life better for working people and working families. I'm not getting into politics because I hated Donald Trump. I really did not. Got into politics because I grew up poor. I was pissed off about it and I wanted to understand what was going on. And now I'm recognizing, as many people are recognizing, that this president has no interest in making life better for the American people.
Only have a couple minutes left, so I just want to get to some just politics
Yeah,
stuff. So Utah is in a redistricting process. You see it in California as well. Utah's more of a battle. We're going to court again and again and again on this map, but it's because there's a chance here for Democrats to make some seats potentially competitive in Utah. I know people heard that, fell off their chair, and said there's no way that's going to happen, but there is a chance. We have potential candidates already lining up to compete here. At the DNC, do you guys ever look at the state of Utah and say, maybe we could do something here? Or is Utah a place that's like, we got to focus on New Jersey, Virginia, Georgia?
no, I would tell you, just last weekend, I was in Wyoming and I had somebody say, Malcolm, why are you in Wyoming? I said, because there are families in Wyoming who whose lives we need to try to make better. You know, we're in a position where if you don't show up, you lose. And I think for me, the purpose of elections is to make people's lives better. It's the purpose. It's why we do all this. I mean, I'm not doing all this just because I want, somebody with my jersey on to win. I have football for that, okay? This is about what do we do materially to make people's lives better. And I think for the Democratic Party, one of our big mistakes is for election cycle after election cycle, we've done two things. A, we've acted as if the DNC only exists to announce a presidential nominee every 4 years. There are elections every year that we need to be investing in and focusing on. And you're seeing the DNC put our money where our mouth is. We used to spend about 8% of our budget on investments in state parties. That number is now 24% because we understand the significant impact of being able to talk to people year round, not just talk to people about, hey, vote for this candidate, but ask people, what are the things that you need and how can we have candidates and policies that respond to the needs that you have. The second thing is we're not just going to hunker down in 7 battleground states. Utah was one of the states that, even though Donald Trump won, moved the furthest away from him in the last election. And so I think we have to continue to have conversations with people about what Democrats actually believe, because Republicans really push out a message about what Democrats believe, and I listen to some of the things that they say, and I'm like, what planet are we on? Because I haven't said any of those things. These idea of these like radical ideas. I don't think it's radical that the wealthiest people in the world pay their fair share of taxes the way that police officers and teachers and nurses have to. I don't think it's radical that people can go to the doctor when they're sick or be able to afford a home in a neighborhood that's safe. These are the things that Democrats are fighting for, and I'm confident that if we organize everywhere, we can win anywhere, as Chair Ken Martin says all the time. But I also know that if we don't organize in places, we never have a chance to win.
And because of you said this earlier in one of your answers about not picking a candidate, the DNC waits until the primary is over and then you support. There was a little bit of an argument on the internet, and you chimed in about the DCCC versus the DNC because there was complaints about what was going on in Maine, where the
I'm
DCCC
going to be in Maine next week, by the way.
not supporting any candidates,
Not supporting it.
just there to help.
Just
But again, you saw in Maine, bringing in Janet Mills, DCCC putting money towards Janet Mills when Graham Plattner has been, gaining popularity. How much do you have to battle sometimes that in your own party of just letting the candidates play out?
it's constant. And I'm going to repeat to you, Jordan Tracy, the DNC does not endorse in primaries, period. Literally at our summer meeting in Minneapolis, we put that into our bylaws, and that happened with a wide vote because we understand that somebody has to be the umpire, somebody has to be there calling balls and strikes, and also somebody has to be there when tough primaries are over to say, okay, everybody, now let's come together and focus on beating Republicans and winning in the general election, and that's the role that we have to play, and it's an important role to play. I get that a lot of these, acronyms are confusing to people, the DSCC versus the DCCC, the DNC, but the DSCC and the DCC, these are organizations that members of Congress pay into. And so the whole purpose of those organizations is just to elect Democrats, but to elect the people who pay in to get different supports that they need. The DNC, we get our marching orders from Democrats, rank and file Democrats all across the country. And I want people to know that when people have said, they have felt like the party has put their thumb on the scale against certain candidates, people should feel confident that there were folks that heard you, and people like Malcolm Kenyatta and Ken Martin who ran because we wanted to change those, change that sense among people that we were trying to get involved in that way. We have one job at the DNC. It's to build election infrastructure so candidates or Democratic nominees can win elections, and that's where we're going to be focused.
Finally, Pennsylvania questions. How do your feet feel after that long march from Philadelphia to Harrisburg?
I'm still impaired later.
That was pretty amazing to chronicle on social
Yeah,
media.
105 miles. I walked from Philadelphia to Harrisburg. And the point that I made at the time was that Pennsylvania, as is often the case, is the canary in the coal mine. And yes, we were talking about transit funding, but I was also talking about my Republican colleagues who, again, refused to come to the table to pass a budget. This is a very sad fact, but Pennsylvania is the only state in the country that does not have a budget. And it's frustrating for me in the House because we have passed 3 bipartisan budgets. And so people say, why can't the Democrats and Republicans sit together? And I'm like, in the House, we've gotten Democrats and Republicans to agree. The Senate, which is controlled by Republicans, they won't bring any of those bipartisan bills to the floor for a vote. I do not understand it. I cannot comprehend it. But I will say, I got about 85 miles into the walk, and I said, what did I agree to? But then I was too close to quit.
Yeah.
I was too close to quit.
No, you get in trouble for that. What's it been like for Pennsylvania Democrats? It seems like both yourself, Governor Josh Shapiro, have become national voices now. When people want to talk about what the Democrats feel and how the Democrats are doing, they're turning to Pennsylvania.
You know, we remain the center of the political universe in so many respects, and we're going to continue to, lead the way on what I mean about making life better for working people and working families, investing in education, making it easier for people to get a good family sustaining job, continuing the work that we need to do to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, and do everything we can to make people be and feel safe in their communities. And I do think, Pennsylvania is really showing a path forward. The Pennsylvania House, at least, controlled by Democrats, is showing a path forward. And I know it's shocking for people to believe, but about 90% of the bills that have passed out of the House are bipartisan. I mean, so, I get that there's this constant sort of loggerheads that it feels like we're at. But I want to say for us, whether it's the federal shutdown, whether it's the state budget impasse that we're having, Democrats are ready, willing, and able to work with anybody to get things done for the American people. And the Democratic Party is not going to be, sleeping on Utah. I'll be back here again. I had a great opportunity to meet with a number of Democratic activists and leaders and elected officials yesterday, who were helping me to better understand what's happening here in Utah and how we can more support at the national level. And we're going to keep showing up everywhere.
Toughest question that I have for you. Go Birds?
Go Birds.
How do you feel about the Birds?
I'm feeling good, and I will say to everybody, the Eagles are going to be in the Super Bowl again, and we are going to win again. And so we can run that tape back later.
Run that tape back. Last year when they made it to the Super Bowl, I was wearing a green tie, and I work weekends, so I was rubbing it in the sports director's face, and he cut my tie on air because he was
Oh
tired
my
of that.
gosh.
And then when he
They don't play around anymore.
no. And like Utah doesn't have like a universal team to root for when it comes to
It should
football.
be the Eagles.
I'm trying. I'm working on that. And then he wore that cut tie when they won because I said, hey, if they win the Super Bowl, you got to wear that tie. So it's I'm bringing it here as much as I can. And then finally, cheesesteaks in Utah. I got to tell you, there's a place called Moochie's, not a sponsor. I think it's pretty close.
Really?
I'm going to give it, it's from somebody who's from Philadelphia.
Go to Mooch's before I leave.
You got to go check out Moochie's, I think. It's actually Wiz. It's actually Wiz on there. So they're doing it right. And
Mooch's, I'm coming to find.
they also have Tasty Cakes, which like,
So
that's
this
very
could
PA.
be
It's very
this
PA.
could be like an Eagles.
It
box.
could be. We got to get it going. But
Well, Governor Cox, if you watch this later, you should make a proclamation about making. I saw him do an ad with Wes Moore about being bipartisan.
Sure, yeah.
Bi-coastal. So we could be bi-coastal and make Philadelphia Eagles the team.
we need an Eagles bar here in Utah.
Okay, here we go.
All right. Mr. Kenyatta, thank you so much. I appreciate you.